Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group for Wednesday, August the 26th, 2026. Do not adjust that radio dial. This is really what I sound like, and I will try to keep my talking to a minimum so you don't have to listen to James Brierton in Charlotte sounding like he's recovering from a head cold. Greg Fishel is with me here on the Carolina Weather Group panel. Sam Walker belongs shortly. Bob Bright is with us from the National Weather Service office in Wilmington because we want to start this week by talking about a big upcoming anniversary. Oh, let's zoom that out a little bit. There we go. Hurricane Fran, developing in late August, continuing into early September of 1996, 30 years since Hurricane Fran. Here's some of the satellite imagery. And these guys are going to talk about the impact, the history of the storm, and an upcoming event that you can be a part of to learn even more about the storm. So, Bob, first and foremost, thank you for taking time to be with us tonight. I'm sorry I sound like whatever this is.
Hey, no problem. Good to be here. Good to see Greg again. And yeah, I was at NC State in the early 2000s. You probably don't remember, but
wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, I was down in Charleston at the Weather Service, and now I'm up in Wilmington. But
okay,
yeah, we're talking Fran. 30 years. I wasn't here for the storm, but a lot of people still talk about that one. So,
and I don't know.
Years.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, 30 years. Obviously we've had major hurricanes, significant impacts, I should say. Nothing. That was the last officially major hurricane to make landfall in North Carolina. It's really hard to believe, but yeah. So, what were your memories? I know you're in Raleigh, right?
Yes, and I don't know if it's possible to put that track back up there on the screen, because there's a very important thing to point out there, is that you can see there that, in general, the system was gradually turning toward the north. It was a very, very slow and gradual process, but it was doing that. And the 11 o'clock advisory, when it came out, it basically, bought into the idea that this trend toward the north is going to continue. And the forecast track took it up well east of Raleigh at that point in time. And that doesn't mean that Raleigh wasn't going to have any effect, but it certainly was not going to be the effect that we ended up having, because it was almost like Fran said, okay, you think I'm going to keep turning toward the north, and what I'm going to do is go back to the original track, and I'm going to go right up over Raleigh, and I'm going to beat the the bazookas out of them, which it did. And so that was the surprise that I think, I don't remember exactly what I said at 11 o'clock that night, but I certainly did not think that it was going to come up right over Raleigh the way it did. And then the other thing is that there was $1 billion of damage in Wake County alone from that storm in 1996 dollars. And the winds, there was never a sustained wind, hurricane force wind at the Raleigh-Durham Airport. And so I talked to this guy that was the head of the Department of Forestry at NC State after the fact. And he told me, he said, the type of soil that we have in central North Carolina, when it becomes saturated, it takes on the consistency of a pancake batter. So he said, you don't need 150-mile-an-hour winds to bring trees down that are sitting in a pancake batter all night long. And every tree you saw that was down, the entire root ball was visible from that tree. This was not a snapping off of trees the way you see with a tornado or something like that. This was an uprooting of every single tree with the entire root ball visible. And it was, those two things are the two things that I guess stand out to me, is that last minute change in the track, and then also the remarkable amount of damage with the number of trees that were down. And one of the funny things that happened, I lived on a cul-de-sac and the power was out for a couple of weeks. And so we all had our gas grills out in the cul-de-sac every night cooking dinner. And one of the neighbors came up to me and he said, we ought to call the power company and have them shut off the power once a month so we can all get reacquainted. And there was really truth to that because, as time has gone on and we spend more time on computers and phones and all that kind of stuff, it's easy to live in a neighborhood and not know your neighbors anymore. And so in that sense, it actually was sort of a cool thing and we all got to spend more time with each other.
Yeah, blessing in disguise, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me that, Fran that year, obviously, you remember the 90s well. There were, a lot of storms in the Carolinas. But just a couple months prior to Fran, Bertha was a pretty strong Category 2.
Yes.
Kind of came right through that area as well. I think it made landfall just up the coast from Fran, but it really did quite a bit of damage. It kind of set the stage for what Fran was gonna do, and that was a big part of the storm, especially when it came to the storm surge. Now, there's some interesting aspects to that as well, and some folks might not realize, but I think initially the storm is supposed to hit down closer to Myrtle Beach at high tide. Now that would have been pretty much a worst case scenario, especially down that way. As it was, the storm turned a little bit more north, came up pretty much up the Cape Fear, and produced quite a bit of storm surge, even downtown Wilmington, and then on up the coast. Even well north toward in far inland toward New Bern, and there was quite a bit of storm surge up there. So again, another reminder that you don't have to live at the beach to get heavily impacted, especially by the water. But yeah, as bad as it was, I mean, it definitely could have been worse if it came in at high tide. If it was a little maybe farther south, Myrtle Beach probably would have got hit harder, and Wilmington probably would have even got hit harder than it was. So definitely an interesting storm for sure.
Bob, you guys have a special webpage remembering the storm, and you used one of my favorite maps, which kind of displays, and I'll describe it for audio listeners, what's the worst hurricane anyone remembers. And it shows a lot of the Carolinas from the coast inland, 1989's Hugo, but also shows 1996 Fran, especially up over the Raleigh area, as you and Greg were talking about, right? Where the coast is kind of focusing on Hugo or Hazel. And this map draws us back to an episode of the Carolina Weather Group we did in the past year or so, where Pierre Forrester took it upon himself to update that map post Helene, post Matthew, post Florence. And you can see that even all of these years later, that Fran, according to just, this internet-based survey, still being remembered as the worst storm up there in the Raleigh-Durham area. And it really got me thinking, we see the inclusion now on the modern day map of Matthew and Florence. But Fran still remains the last major hurricane, the Category 3 or stronger storm to hit the Carolinas 30 years ago. I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
Yes. Yeah. And if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm trying to do some research here while we're talking, and I'm not finding much, but if I recall, the night before Bertha made landfall, it was really struggling. And there was some thought that this thing, might be a tropical storm, the next morning, that there wasn't any indication that it was going to take off. And then I get up the next morning, and not only is it a hurricane, but it's a Cat 2. And unfortunately, the National Hurricane Center advisory archives only go back to 98. And they sort of have a mishmash of stuff before that, which I'm in the process of going through right now.
Yeah, it looks like, and maybe Bob, if this is something you found in your research as well too, but to Greg's point, it looks like because of the setup of those storms and just given the 90s technology, I guess hurricane warnings came out about 28 hours before landfall. So we kind of had a 1-2 punch here between Bertha and Fran. Can you kind of walk us? Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Greg's frozen.
Greg might be frozen. Bob, can you walk us through that? What was the mentality of that, like that 1-2 punch that happened?
Just having Bertha first, you mean, and then
Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, like I said, I personally was not here during the storm. Hopefully we'll mention that we're going to have that webinar next Tuesday, but we're going to have hopefully some folks on that were actually here and definitely could speak to that. But like I said, just the fact that the damage that Bertha produced, especially to the dunes, that just aided in the flooding, coastal flooding, and from the storm surge quite significantly once Fran came. And it probably also did some, weaken some of the trees and such. And I know it seems like through the, reading about it there was quite a bit of, it was kind of a wet period before Fran came.
Yes.
And so Greg probably remembers that. But so, that also contributed to, like Greg was saying, wet soils and that don't, that are like pancake batter. They don't hold up too much to the wind. And, I think the main thing that we want to drive home is, we've seen a lot of heavy rain and water events of late, but man, with all the population and more structures around here now, like a big wind event, that could be really problematic.
Well, it's remarkable to me that so many of these storms, we keep talking about their intensity inland, right? Where they're no longer at their peak strengths. Even going back to, of course, Helene or Hugo or Fran, right? They're causing all of these impacts to folks who maybe don't have hurricanes on the mind because they don't live at the beach.
Yeah. And there's so many factors, Greg. There's so many factors involved in, like as an agency with the Weather Service, we try to focus more on the impacts, and try to get people prepared for those. And, we try to take into account all those antecedent conditions and other things and try to tell people like, hey, this is what you should be preparing for. And, not everybody pays attention day to day to everything that, weather and all that. And, just the fact that the dunes really aren't there anymore, like that's going to make the situation a lot worse. So we can try to take a lot of that into account, when we're briefing, officials about what to expect and what could happen. So it's a step beyond just the forecast. I mean, getting the forecast right obviously is important, but you also have to have a good message and consistent message and get people to trust you and hopefully people will heed those warnings and take action.
You mentioned the webinar. We have the QR code on the screen right now, and I can put the webpage up here from the National Weather Service Wilmington's website. But tell us, Bob, Tuesday, September 1st, 7:30 p.m. is this webinar. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we're planning to have a webinar. It's going to be, as you saw there, 7:30 next Tuesday. And right now we got Ed Piotrowski. He was a meteorologist down with WPD, I believe. I'm not sure if it was WPD back then, but he's currently with WPD. And so he lived through the storm, so he'll have an interesting perspective on it from the Myrtle Beach area. And then Mark Sudduth, who is a storm chaser from HurricaneTrack.com. He's pretty well known. I think, he's
been on our show. Yeah.
He's been probably, around here, and I've seen him on national news. So he grew up in Wilmington, I believe. And so we'll have a good perspective. And we're also trying to get a little broader perspective on the impacts elsewhere in North Carolina. So we're hoping to get some folks from the Weather Service in Morehead City, as well as Raleigh. So I look forward to that. And all the registration info is on that webpage. So if you go to our main website, weather.gov/ILM, there's a link at the top there to the Fran page, and then you can get the registration info. So
I've also just included it in the comments for anybody who's watching along live with us tonight. Wow, my voice, this is going to be really interesting to see if my voice makes it the rest of the hour. Greg, you have something on your screen share, I believe.
Yes, these are the lat longs and wind speeds with Bertha. And this sort of confirmed what I was talking about earlier. I've got my cursor right next to a place where it says 966 millibars. And that was on the 10th at 18Z, which is 2 p.m. local time. And so look what happened to the central pressure from that point forward. It went up to 968, 972.
I think we lost Greg again. Okay. Bob, I'm going to do this while we wait for Greg to come back. He'll be there eventually. We got a comment from somebody who's watching our conversation right now on Facebook. And I'll read this real fast. It's from Brandon. Fran was the worst in my lifetime. I was born in 1985 in Randolph County. And of course, Hazel was worst for my area in 1954, which we can see on that original map where people were asked to, recount what the worst storms were for their area, Fran and Hazel being side by side there. And then a follow-up comment from Brandon that Fran was the worst flooding I had seen in my lifetime until 2018 when Florence came around. So I think Brandon is kind of the real life encapsulation, if you will, of what the updated map and the original map kind of show us here about people's recollection of the worst storms to impact their area there in the eastern half of North Carolina.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is interesting to see, how everybody, what their perspectives are and how they interpret it, but I mean, every storm is unique. And I think that's one of the main challenges for us as meteorologists, especially, government meteorologists, to try to, take all the forecast and get people prepared, get them ready, considering all those factors that, like I said, I mean, just the fact that it was a very wet period leading up to the storm, that's going to, cause different impacts, right? And sometimes, the winds, like you said, I mean, you don't need as strong winds, to produce the similar impacts if you have very wet soils. So, just reminding folks that, there's warnings out for a reason. We're doing our best to, predict potential impacts and, help you make the best decisions you can.
Yep. That is some really good point and information there. And I think folks wanting to learn more about that, wanting to learn more about the storm, hear some personal recounts, that webinar Tuesday night, September 1st, 7:30, free to join there, hosted by the National Weather Service in Wilmington. And I think equally interesting for anyone in the Carolinas or anyone who's interested in storms, will be a real good time. Is there anything else, Bob, before we let you go tonight that you want to mention?
No, that's it. Thanks for letting me join. I pretty much, as far as Fran goes, I think we covered it all. I do want to just kind of generally mention we're heading to the peak of the hurricane season here. I know it's been quiet. And, again, it only takes one. So it's much easier when you're prepared. And so we hope that, everyone can get ready. And again, just like learn your risks, understand the forecast products. We have a lot of resources on our website, and other National Weather Service offices do as well. If not, reach out to folks to any, each county has in the states have emergency management offices. Reach out to them. Just learn the impacts, potential risks in your area, and be ready to act when the time arises. So
yeah, Absolutely. Bob, thank you for putting up for my voice tonight. I appreciate you coming on tonight and talking with us. And I hope you guys have a great webinar on Tuesday night.
Yeah. Thanks, James. Have a great night.
All right. Good to see you again. We'll be back with more in 90 seconds right here on the Carolina Weather Group as we continue on with our program tonight. We're expecting Sam Walker and also anticipating that the one and only Greg Fishel will be back with us in just a moment. Stay tuned.
And let you guys see what it is that I'm experiencing.
Trying to get a direct measurement with a handheld Kestrel anemometer here. We'll see what we can pick up, but and there goes change.
When a tornado-warned cell came through the neighborhood and it brought down several large pines, just like the one you're seeing right here behind me. To give you a sense of what the aftermath of storm damage smells like, it smells very heavily of pine and also sounds like chainsaws. We have another tree down here. This one just barely missing this brick home.
Down here. I mean, this is incredible. Let me turn the camera around. Get us back into kind of a dry view.
And I get up here, and all of a sudden, the storm surge started. And all of a sudden, I ended up with about 4 feet of water.
I'm Scotty Powell here reporting just outside of Sparta, North Carolina, where you've seen a lot of the earthquake damage. Again, a 5.1 magnitude earthquake rocked Sparta, North Carolina earlier this morning, just after 8 a.m.
If you go look at the footing of that, you'll see where it was a twist. Very severe wind that caused these structures.
From Gaston County to back here in Mecklenburg County, those were just two of the tornado warnings that were issued here for the greater Charlotte area.
I'm not one for hyperbole, but it's countless at this point. There's trees on houses, there's a lot of roads that are blocked. We're just trying to get cleaned up so people can get through.
Have you ever seen the Dan River like this before?
No, not that I can recall. I mean, I've seen it fairly flooded before, but I've never seen it to where we're now kind of asking ourselves, okay, a couple more feet and it might get over those bridges.
That promo is an oldie but a goodie. Welcome back to Carolina Weather Group. Sam Walker is here, which is great, Sam, because no one wants to hear me talk, I'm sure.
James, it's you sound like I did 15 years ago this weekend after having been on the air for 72 hours during and after Hurricane Irene. So totally understand hanging on by a thread at this point. So glad I could jump in here.
That was good timing. And
very good timing, indeed.
You're not on the Outer Banks.
No, I am not. I'm actually in the Gate City tonight up here with my wife. She's got a conference up here. So I was able to tag along and actually leave the beach for a couple of days, which, I mean, I just did that 48 hours ago. I was in Raleigh, drove back to the Outer Banks, now drive to Greensboro. But that's how we roll when we live out on the edge of the continental shelf.
Yeah, I want to catch up on your travels, including your visit with NASA astronaut Christina Koch. We'll bring back in Greg Fishel, so you have somebody to talk to who isn't me. Hi, Greg.
Hey, James, I just hit refresh because I didn't even realize that you couldn't see me or hear me at all.
Which meant he thought we were just ignoring him.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about Bertha, and all of a sudden somebody else was talking about something else, and I figured, well, they must not hear me. But now, is this a violation? I'm sharing a screen with a 20-second clip of me enduring Fran. Is that?
I don't know. Let's play it and find out.
Okay, you want to give it a shot?
Let's do it.
All right. So you got it called up?
I got it called up. Go ahead.
Okay. All right.
It's scary for everybody, especially how relentless this is. We've had a gust of 65 miles an hour here at the station, 67 miles an hour at the airport, Hurricane 74, close enough for government work. We have hurricane force conditions here right now.
There you go. The one, the only Greg Fishel. It's a stylish jacket you got on.
Yeah. So that was in the garden, right? Over there on Western Boulevard, right?
It was actually in the breezeway between the two buildings with the garden right behind it. And actually my glasses blew off during one of those cut-ins, and it was going down the stairway into the gardens, and I thought I'd never find them. And somehow, by the grace of God, I did.
Well, I'll go ahead and admit at the point that was, we probably had already lost power. So we were listening to you on the radio side, just listening to the audio at that point. Cause we lost power. My wife is here with me. About 8 o'clock? I think it was like 8 o'clock that night down in Dunn. and didn't have it back for a week during Fran. So yeah, so we were tied to the radio at that point.
Does the name Tom Suter mean anything to you? He used to do the sport.
Yes, of course it does.
so he lived up near Falls Lake, and at 11:30 he said, "Am I going to be okay getting home?" And I told him, because I didn't realize how bad it was at that point. And so I said, "Yeah, as long as you use common sense." Well, apparently he had to negotiate trees down all over the place on the way home. And it's so funny, even to this day, he'll say, "You know, Fish, you damn near killed me that night."
What was Suter doing in the studio anyway? At that point, you guys already gone wall to wall. At that point, there wasn't no football Friday that night for sure.
Oh my God. I just had dinner with him last week, by the way. He's 78 years old now and doing great.
Yeah. That's awesome to hear. That is the one thing I will say this, and having grown up on the coast and having experienced hurricanes throughout my lifetime, before that, before Hurricane Fran. So what remind me, let's see what year we are at. What that was 96. So I, at that point, was 23 years old, had experienced plenty of hurricanes, nor'easters out on the coast of North Carolina. That to me was the most intense hurricane I had ever gone through in my life, because it's not something you expect at all to be 90 miles inland.
Right.
And to go through what we went through that night, to lose power that fast. And, in the early 90s, I mean, the grid wasn't like it is today, as fortified as it is on the coast. We were used to power going out, but we've stayed pretty much well lit. But to lose power that fast in a hurricane, and then just to go through all night like it was, and then the aftermath, and not having lived somewhere where you had 60-foot pine trees everywhere. And I have sworn since then I will never live anywhere that has 60-foot plus pine trees around it after Fran. That is one of the most enduring images from that storm, is just the amount of tree damage that happened in central North Carolina, in, all these inland areas that we don't normally talk about when we talk about tropical systems.
Yes, exactly.
And one of the reasons that was, I mean, you talk about Fran, but so a lot of that had to do with not just with the wind speed, but the fact the ground was so saturated going into Fran, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And we had talked earlier about how Bertha, had just hit a couple of months before that. And that made a last minute comeback. I was sharing some information about that earlier when my signal went out. But it had weakened 18 millibars going into the night before landfall. And I wasn't even sure it was going to still be a hurricane in the morning. I remember at 11 o'clock talking about, this thing's dying. And then I wake up in the morning and it's got all of that strength back and more. And it's up to a Cat 2, Yeah.
I was just talking this evening at dinner with a friend of ours from Currituck County. Her husband's retired game warden in Currituck, had been sent to Topsail in the post-Fran, and just talked about how Topsail was, erased. Pretty much erased from existence, being on the eastern eye wall of Fran. Even as far out as it was, because landfall was truly Cape Fear, the center of circulation making landfall at Cape Fear. And you think about how far Topsail Island is from there, how far out that intensity on the eastern eye wall was, and what the damage it did, from pretty much from Fort Fisher on up past Topsail, on up towards almost Emerald Isle.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And, if you think about it, the mid and late 90s, or that whole area around Topsail, that was ground zero for a lot of storms. You had Bertha, Fran, Bonnie, Dennis, and Floyd. All of those made landfall not too far away from that location.
Right, exactly. And we talk about 30 years since Fran. Tomorrow is 15 years since Irene, and it's unique. When we talk about landfalling hurricanes on the central coast and what it does, not just to those areas, those are the ones that we dread on the Outer Banks, is anything that landfalls at Cape Lookout, Morehead City, Atlantic Beach, those areas, anything that comes on the Crystal Coast as center of circulation, that usually really does spell disaster for us on the Outer Banks. And as we saw 15 years ago with Hurricane Irene, this weekend, what it did wasn't so much the wind. That's going to be the one that we remember more for because of what it did sound side storm surge.
Right.
It's something that's very important to relay, I think, to people who don't quite understand what happens when you get a landfalling hurricane that brings a southerly, southwesterly flow to the backside of the Outer Banks. It's not the ocean that causes those blowouts. And we can go back to Hurricane Isabel and it creating that large inlet between Frisco and Hatteras Village. The same thing happened between Oregon Inlet and Rodanthe and cut off Hatteras and Ocracoke Islands for weeks, essentially, is that it's not the ocean that causes that. That's actually the Pamlico Sound. Because what the Pamlico Sound, that wind, when you get that shift, and we see it when the water levels drop, and then you've got that northeast blow, then it rapidly switches back to the southwest and blows all that water, and it finds the weakest spot. That water of the second largest estuary system on the North American continent behind Puget Sound and Chesapeake, or third largest behind Puget Sound and Chesapeake Bay, all that water pushes against it. Each of these storms are so different when we talk about Fran and what it did to the Triangle, what it did all up along Topsail and places like that. And then you look 15 years later, what Hurricane Irene did to my end of the world with that creating an inlet and, blowing things out. And that's not, again, an oceanside event. One of the things I remember most about Hurricane Irene and covering Hurricane Irene, and like I said, we were on our radio stations there, Beach 104. We were on there for roughly 5 straight days doing coverage because of the devastation that happened. Was when the center of Irene passed over the Outer Banks, made its way back offshore, and when that wind shift happened, when the sound tide came up, we were getting updates from Hatteras Island pretty regularly. We had our listeners that were down there were calling us. We had people that were sending us stuff at the time. Social media was just getting started at that time, really taking hold. And then nothing, absolutely nothing. It was a true black hole because the inlet cut the communication lines. And that was it. And there was no communication. It was like, we're not getting anything from Hatteras. We're not getting anything from Columbia and places like that. And that was because of that soundside storm surge that washed out, it created an inlet and washed out every piece of communication line, washed out the power lines that feed Hatteras Island. That's the thing that has always stuck with me from Hurricane Irene.
So let me ask you a question about that, because this is bringing back memories of the tornado outbreak in March of '84 when the communications were knocked out. We weren't getting any reports, and the initial assumption was, it must not be that bad. Well, it was bad, and the reason we didn't know it is because nobody could communicate that information to us. So in that situation with you guys, did you at first think that maybe it wasn't that bad, and then you came to find out later that it was worse than you could have ever imagined?
Well, and there was 2 things that kind of went on, because not only did we lose communication with Hatteras, we knew, because we had 2 studios. Our radio group at the time had 2 studios, one in Nags Head, one in Wanchese, down on the south end of Roanoke Island. And the guys that were manning that studio, and I actually had been in that studio until about 4:00 and then went over back to our Nags Head studio. An hour later, there was 3 feet of water surrounding, 3 feet of the Pamlico Sound surrounding the studios there in Wanchese, right in the Wanchese Marine Industrial Park.
Wow.
And there was 3 feet of water over the Nags Head Manio Causeway. And I believe Mark Southern has actually some great video of that. But that was the sound tide. We knew we definitely knew we were having flooding issues. And I think part of it was we started focusing on what we were getting from the folks on Roanoke Island, the folks in Columbia, the folks that were up in Elizabeth City, because on the north end of the Albemarle Sound, all that wind is pushing that water up there. So we were so focused on that. And then it started to realize, hey, we're not hearing anything from Hatteras. What do we got going on there?
Yeah.
And it was probably about 3 or 4 hours later that we realized, something's really serious. And that's when we started getting reports that New Inlet, as it was called in the 1930s when it first formed with a hurricane and then filled back in, that an inlet had been cut. And then we started getting the reports of, 4, 5, 6 feet of water in Rodanthe from the Pamlico Sound. That's what sticks with me. But you're right. Yeah, it's you don't think it's that bad. But we were so focused on other areas that were getting hit. But definitely when, it's all said and done, it's like, okay, that's the reason was, like you said, the communications were just cut off. It's interesting you say that because we all think, out living out on the coast, we deal with these all the time, but you don't expect the triangle to have a situation like you just talked about in 1984 with the tornado outbreak here and what it did to the communications in the triangle. That's interesting to hear that even that far back and that far advanced we were at that point with communications, that you guys just lost everything here. And it's just because the severity of that outbreak.
Yeah. And actually, the worst of it was down around Maxton and Red Springs and Salemburg and all that sort of stuff. And I'll never forget, I think it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon that the temperature in Fayetteville was, I think, over 80, and in Greensboro was 49. Mm-hmm. And, this, and what was fat, and I don't mean to get off on a tangent here, but the night before, these thunderstorms had come through North Carolina, and they had laid down this outflow boundary from about Athens, Georgia, over to around Maxton and Red Springs. And so I used to hand plot the maps back then. Mm-hmm. And so at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I look at Athens, Georgia, and it reports a 10 millibar fall in 3 hours. And I thought it was a mistake.
Wow.
And it was real. And then this mesolow moved right along that outflow boundary and spawned all those F3 and F4 tornadoes that ended up killing 57 people.
Amazing. That is one thing about it. This time of year, September or late August and early September, we talk about it, it's the peak of hurricane season.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of anniversaries that all seem to be run together in these next 2 weeks. Hey, remember too, 15 years ago, we had an earthquake on top of that damaged the Washington Monument and did what it did out in Oilville, Virginia. We felt that earthquake on the Outer Banks as we had actually left a meeting, a pre-storm meeting amongst our staff. We felt that earthquake, and that set off a whole chain of events. So
Sam, whose fault was that? I'm sorry. I
blame it on the Commonwealth. We'll blame it on the Commonwealth.
Hey, James, are you still there?
Regrettably.
Okay. I was just wondering if you could put up the screen share, if we could try this one more time.
I have the video of you.
Oh, you still have that?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I was hoping that you'd have a bunch of lat longs there. Yeah, that's what I'm sharing. Can you see it now?
Now I got it.
Okay. So longitude is a measure of how far west something is. Okay. So let's start about here where you've got 74.7. This is Fran. And it goes to 75.5. So that's an increase of 0.8. Then 76.1.6, 76.7.6, 77.2.5, 77.8.6. Then at 8 o'clock local time, it only increases 0.2. And so it's actually moving more north than it is northwest at that point. And so the new advisory comes out at 11 o'clock, takes the center up over eastern North Carolina around Rocky Mount. And then look at the next time step, it increases, it's back to 0.7. Okay, so all it did was wobble for a couple of hours, and then it went right back to the same track that it was doing originally, which took it right up over Raleigh.
Wow. That's interesting to see. Well, Greg, it's been fun talking about what we look back in the past. We've got some other stuff that we've got to look back here, and just very recent. Want to take a chance to share my experience this past week. In fact, a couple of days ago, in fact, to be in the presence of a true American and North Carolina hero on Monday as Christina Koch, the first woman to orbit the moon, farthest to ever travel away from our planet. The first woman to participate in an all-female spacewalk. She also had the record for the longest to be in space. All these different marks. But NC State did just a wonderful job celebrating her homecoming on Monday and Tuesday with events both days, but really the public event. And you see here the press conference that she had. And it was really cool because they had several youngsters get the first questions in on the press conference on Monday. But man, what a great experience. I'm so glad I made the drive up for that because it was truly moving. I'll be honest with you. I think, yeah, I mean, James went to me, or we went live there behind the podium or behind the risers, the camera risers, and I could barely talk. It was just that emotional. I mean, you had the marching band there, you had the students there, you had, and again, Christina Koch, of all things. She was there. It was really a great day to celebrate.
I don't think this political ad was there. That's what I get.
No,
for rolling this off.
would you get your premiums paid?
Yeah. Support us on Patreon so I can buy YouTube Premium.
That will take care.
Who knew I was voting in Texas?
I was about to say, how is that? What is going on here? Yeah. But it was really a neat event. One thing, a couple of things to share with it, and obviously we've shown all the different clips throughout since then. They named Engineering Building 2 there on Centennial Campus, Christina Koch Hall. I think the coolest thing, and that was the thing she knew about that actually in the press conference afterwards. She knew that was coming. The thing she didn't know was that she was getting a Howling Cow flavor. That was probably her reaction to that was just as cool as anything. When Chancellor Howe announced that there was a berry flavored, I believe it's blueberries and raspberries. It's got a graham cracker crust and it's called Howling at the Moon over at Howling Cow. And if you're not familiar with what Howling Cow is, it's a big point of pride for NC State University now. It's their own ice creamery made with milk from their dairy farm out on, is that Lake Boone Trail? Greg, remind me, isn't that where all the farm and that stuff is out on Lake Boone? It's on the south side of town. I know that.
Oh, yeah, that would actually be, like out around maybe Tryon Road or something like that?
Yeah, Tryon Road and out that way. I don't know if that's Lake Boone. But anyway, there was Chancellor Howe holding up the ice cream when they announced that. But it was really the thing that struck me on Monday, and again, you can go back and watch all the different clips on our social media. We post that this press conference. We had the opportunity to do a gaggle with Christina and Chancellor Howe. The thing that was really the most endearing about Christina Koch is how affable she is and how just personable she is. The way she reacted to every one of those children who came up and asked her questions, the way she answered the questions of us, every single thing, the personality. And it was funny. James and I talked about this offline on Monday as I was driving back. I go back to watching the movie The Right Stuff. And you go back and you watch, and if you remember, Ed Harris is playing John Glenn and how he was the gregarious, during that press conference when they announced the Apollos, the Mercury 7 astronauts. And that, of course, is a dramatized version of it. But how it swayed people in the crowd who were very skeptical about what the space program was going to be like. And the standing ovation, there's one actor, and I can't remember his name. I wish I could right now who he was portraying in the movie. But the way he stands up and just violently clapping and cheering and all that, that's what it felt like to be in her presence. Wow. That's what it felt like on Monday. That's the way that that NASA, our space program, has gone from people who, for lack of a better term, the best and the brightest, but also the ones that are willing to put it on the edge. They had the right stuff. They may not have been quite as personable with the media and personable with the public other than a John Glenn. And as the program has gone on, you've seen more and more of that development of the type of people that they choose to be in the astronaut corps, that it's not just about being the best and the brightest and having the right stuff. It's about being able to interact with a little 6-year-old kid or a 53-year-old dude from the beach asking a question, or being around multi-billionaires talking about things like that, and being on Capitol Hill, all those different things. That's what struck me the most. But really, to me, as someone who is a native of North Carolinian, a native Eastern North Carolinian, to see someone just like me to do what she's done, that probably is going to what the last minute. I had a conversation with somebody at dinner tonight here in Greensboro. Says, who's the most famous person you've ever had a chance to interview? And I was like, okay.
Interview or just meet?
meet or interview. I mean, I'll say interview or at least be involved with in a press conference.
I ran into Buzz Aldrin in the hotel breakfast continental line.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Well, you know what? That might top that
But I
probably
didn't really
is the
talk
top
to him.
one. Yeah. Well, okay. Greg, how about you?
Actually, I think I bumped into Rosie Greer when I was a kid in New York City. My parents and I were taking a tour, and he just happened to walk by. And I think this was right after. But wasn't he the one that took down Sirhan after RFK was shot?
Yes, he did. Yep.
And I think it was right after that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one that pops into my mind.
Right.
Then the other thing was, now this is, I'll keep this short, but when I was at WRAL back in the early 90s, I got an invitation. President Clinton was going to invite the chief meteorologist from the top 40 markets in the country to come up there and learn about climate change. And I initially was in the camp of being a skeptic at that point. And so I thought, I'm not going to go up there and listen to this, garbage,
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought to myself, how many people get a chance to be in the West Wing of the White House and shake hands with the President of the United States?
Right.
I don't care what party that they're from.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I changed my mind, and that the things I learned that day from the scientists that gave presentations was the beginning of my transformation to looking at climate change from a scientific standpoint instead of a politically ideological standpoint.
Wow.
And that was a big turning point for me.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, my answer now has shifted dramatically, and this just happened in 48 hours ago for me because, I mean, I've had the chance to sit in the locker room at Cameron Indoor Stadium and interview Coach K.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, actually, and I was still in college then at Campbell doing the pregame show for our radio, for our little 3,000 watt FM station, 90.1 WCC, and the pregame when Campbell played Duke and Cameron back in the 90s. So
wow.
To sit with Coach K for 5 minutes and talk basketball for radio interview. Okay, that's not bad.
No.
Al Warden, who was a command module pilot on Apollo 15. He was actually on the Outer Banks probably 5 or 6 years ago. We had him in studio at Beach 104. He was there for an event, so had a chance to talk to him. And I asked him the same question that I got to ask Christina Koch, which was, you're up there all alone in the command module. Did you ever think about putting her down on the surface, just like the Apollo 10? Obviously he couldn't. And, it was more of a, a hypothetical. If you had the way, would you do it?
Right.
He said, no, there's no way, I couldn't do that. Did I think about it? I thought about it, just like the Apollo 10 crew on, that wasn't Gumdrop. That was Snoopy, I believe. I can't remember the name that they named their lander. But anyway, they, how close that they got.
Yes.
And, they were only to land
10 miles, I think.
10 miles. Exactly.
Yeah.
Ask the same thing, getting a chance to ask Christina Koch that same exact question. That she has flown by the moon and they're on a piece of equipment that has no chance to land.
Right.
But they talked about it. They looked at each other, and that's what her answer was on Monday. To me, that sticks with me forever. The fact that I've got to talk and ask a question and have it answered by the first woman to orbit another celestial body besides the Earth. That to me is that tops the list. She's the top of the list now.
Well, Sam, I
have the answer to that question. Hang on,
okay.
I'm gonna play. Here's
a
little bit of her answering that.
Whether or not we thought about landing Orion on the moon. Well, it was talked of, but what was talked of even more was just doing another revolution around the moon. We were definitely not ready necessarily to have that great adventure be over as much as we wanted to come home. It was gorgeous, and it called you when you looked at it. It was a place you could go, you could explore. It was a place that felt like we were meant to be, and that was amazing. The question.
I'm super jealous that you guys got to talk to her for an hour, and I have to just really give kudos to Sam because they talked to lots of cameras and there were lots of sound bites, but as far as I know, Sam Walker YouTube channel is the only place you can watch that whole hour of her talking to the media to those sweet little children. So that's the QR code we have on the screen. Sorry, Greg, I interrupted you.
No,
lovely voice.
I was just going to, and I know I'm going to ruffle feathers by telling this story, but I don't care. So a couple of years ago, I was driving Uber down in Charleston, and a young lady got in my car, and I think Artemis 1, the unmanned Artemis, had just landed on the moon. And I said, hey, we just landed on the moon 2 hours ago. She said, yeah, like I believe that.
Oh.
And I said, oh, well, I said, well, what do you think of the Apollo program? And she said, oh, that's all made up. She said, it says in the Bible, you can't leave the firmament, and the firmament's the earth. So that was all fake. So then about a month later, I got a couple in their 50s get in the car, and I'm sharing this story with them, assuming they would see the absurdity of it. And all of a sudden, the guy in the back seat says, you know, Greg, he said, I wish I could work for NASA and debunk all the BS they fed us for the last 60 years. And then I started interviewing randomly College of Charleston students, and none of them believe it happened. One wrote a term paper proving it didn't happen, and the professor approved it. So there's a guy on YouTube, and I don't know what his name is, but he made a great point. He said there are 400,000 people that worked on the Apollo program over 20 years. And he said, my experience in Washington is that if 2 or 3 people know something, it leaks.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me that 400,000 people over 20 years kept the Hollywood moon secret.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the other thing is we left laser reflectors up there that if you aim a laser at that point, it will come back to you. Now, if we didn't put that there, who the heck did?
Exactly. Yeah.
My grandfather, who unfortunately passed before I was born, worked for Grumman, of course, one of the contractors. And I think it was Apollo 12's lander that he worked on. And I've got in the other room. I don't know if it was a painting or print or whatever, but all the people on his team, the team that he was on, like signed it.
Oh, wow.
I was just looking around to see if it was in this room, but it's in the other room. So we'll bring that to the show one day.
My wife's grandfather, who was electrical engineering professor at Ohio Northern University, he worked on some of the electrical systems in the early Apollo days. You know, I had to do some cleaning of timelines over the last 48 hours of that denier stuff. I've been a little busy with the block button of the last day or so, but if 200,000 people over 20 years, come on,
right?
Come on.
And by the way, James, you said Apollo 12. If that's correct, I think that was Pete Conrad's Apollo landing.
Al Bean and Pete Conrad. Pete Conrad was commander, and Al Bean was he was a pilot. Yep.
And Pete was a trip.
Oh, that crew was hilarious. When you go back and you listen to that, and I will admit, there are nights where I have got, I think it's LM5 is the YouTube channel, LM5 on YouTube. They have the full audio of every mission.
Really?
You can listen to it, and it's binaural audio, so you're getting.
Just think about how long it took NASA to fake those hours of recording.
I know, exactly. There's another cool website if you haven't done this, and I always crank it up in July. But it's Apollo. It's a live feed, and you can go to it right now and watch it. In fact, I'll pull it up.
Don't do that because you're watching this show right now.
No, ApolloInRealTime.org. If you go there, you can listen to every single one of the flight of the control room audio feeds. That it breaks it down that much. I'll just put it on. There was one, somebody was calling his girlfriend. That was one of the guys working in mission control. There is audio of that. I don't think it was his wife. I think it was his girlfriend. It's on there. That stuff was archived.
You should go listen to that instead of this show. That sounds weird.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyway, there's some really cool stuff that you can go find. But if you go and listen to the Apollo 12 audio, compare that to the Apollo 11 and how Neil was so straightforward, and all that Buzz was too. Compare that to the comedy show that was Pete Conrad and Al Bean on the moon. It's just hilarious.
Sam,
it is.
Do you remember the Apollo 8 Christmas Eve reading from Genesis?
Well, okay. So, Greg, I was born in 1973, so I don't remember it, but I do know that very well. Yes.
You could have just said yes, Sam.
Yeah.
But if that was moving. And I'm not sure in this day and age that the networks would make time for something like that.
No, and that's something I'm going to give James some credit because he's the one who said this one. I was on my drive back and he still had a voice at this point on Monday.
Barely.
And barely. And the one thing he made a point was, there should have been ticker tape parades for this crew,
for the Artemis
all of them. Every time a human goes in space and comes back, we should be doing that. They're at that level. As cool as it was to see the hundreds of thousands of people lined up down Hillsborough Street and Fayetteville Street back in, earlier this summer for the Carolina Hurricanes winning the Stanley Cup. That's what should have happened for Christina Koch on Monday.
Yeah.
The same level of excitement should have happened because what they do is just so amazing.
Yeah, not to shun what NC State put on, but it was like,
and what NC State put on was just
great.
top notch. I was moved to tears being there for that. The way they did that, and the one thing I probably regret was not going up on the risers to go get a shot of everyone down the oval lined up, because when I got there, it wasn't all that many people, but it filled in. That whole oval was full of students and people just from Raleigh and from North Carolina who came to see a true American and North Carolina hero. And you know what's even crazier is that 48 hours later, 24 hours later, we had another sign of how cool space is right here in North Carolina and over the skies of North Carolina. Start of the day, I will admit I did not get out of bed for it. And I regret it.
Out of bed.
I regret it now because it was one of the best jellyfish we've seen all this year, and probably one of the best we've ever seen.
This was one of my favorite pictures that Glenn Woodall sent us on Facebook, and he sent video too, but just like in the still picture, you can kind of see the ripples.
Yeah.
Launch.
Yes, that is cool.
So
that's something I've never
know what
seen.
We're talking about. Yeah. So this was a Falcon 9 launch, a SpaceX Falcon 9 launch out of Cape Canaveral there in Florida, bringing yet more Starlink satellites into orbit.
But James, when I lived in West Palm, about 5-6 years ago, you could become a member of the Kennedy Space Center. It was like $100 a year, and then for an extra $20, when there was a SpaceX launch, they would take you in a bus out to a grandstand right on the other side of the water from the launch pad.
3 miles. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to go there and watch one of those launches, and that was very
jealous.
Cool.
I'm so jealous.
It is. So what it was a Falcon 9 carrying more SpaceX mini satellites up. My understanding is the last Falcon 9 launch that'll take place from Cape Canaveral with a Starlink payload.
Well, I read that, but then I was confused because isn't there another one on Tuesday?
I think there is another one on Tuesday. So I don't know. What they were talking about was that eventually it would be, that's a cool shot.
Yeah, so this is from Tommy Augustine. You guys might remember this is the same guy who did the drone chasing with the EFU tornado. And is that right when it breaks the sound barrier? Is that what that is? That ripple?
No. So this is what we see in North Carolina is actually when it's on the second stage. So it's already jettisoned the first stage. And what we see when it's a sunrise or sunset launch is the exhaust from the second stage. But where I'm positioned here on the Outer Banks, I can actually see the first stage light its retro rockets as it begins its descent back to the Cape when it does a land landing, or if it even does an ocean landing out on one of their remote barges, that I can actually see that because of where I'm at and kind of know where to look. But to see it actually go from the second stage and leaving the atmosphere, the upper atmosphere, I haven't seen that type of shot before. That was really cool.
Yeah.
James, do you have queued up the shot that I got or got sent to me?
No, I do not.
That would be the one. And really this one, I'm amazed how much that has taken off. There's a shot that was taken. There was a still photo. I have seen some video that was taken. And this launch was yesterday morning, just before sunrise, 5:50, something like that, of a still shot of that jellyfish effect over the Wright Brothers National Memorial Pylon. There it is right there. Yeah. That shot is just Kathy Lassiter caught that shot. That's taken from the west side. So on the sound side of Big Kill Devil Hill, that's the pylon that's atop big kill level hill. The actual flight took somewhere to the left of that shot, but there's that exhaust exactly over the spot where it all began in 1903. That to me is kind of, for us out here on the Outer Banks, as special as that is. And I'm fortunate enough to work with one of my colleagues is the great granddaughter of one of the eyewitnesses of the first flight. So it's kind of, that's how special every time something like this happens out here, it's got a little bit more special meaning for us out here, I think. But that's just a wonderful shot there to see the Wright Brothers National Memorial and the latest venture into space fly over each other. It's just, that's so cool.
Hey, James.
Yes.
Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yes.
Do you see the launch pad?
Yeah, this is you when you watched. So this is a Falcon 9, right?
Yes. Well, I guess I just knew it was SpaceX. But...
Watch the pad. Watch the pad. See, you're on at the light.
Yeah, that's a Falcon 9.
The sound will get here very soon. Get ready for the rumble. Turning up to the northeast.
I was actually impressed that I was able to follow it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a similar, the same type rocket.
Yeah, not the Merlins.
Greg, was your flight crewed or was it Starlinks?
So, anyways, I just wanted to share that with you.
I'm actually looking at it there, James. It was a Starlink launch. 26 batch of Starlink satellites launched on Starlink V1.0-L25. Was 60 Starlink satellites that were launched in that one.
Oh, wow. So you saw the date and looked it up, huh?
Yep, that's it. Literally did. May 4th, 2021 KSC launch, and that's what came up. Thank you, Google.
Wow.
Greg, I came this close to seeing a crewed launch live on the Carolina Weather Group from the press stands.
Oh, really?
They scrubbed it at T-2 minutes. And
oh no!
I'm still upset about it.
I've been at Disney World 3 times for launches. I've seen launches. One was a late night.
That is where you would be.
It doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I would be there. Yeah, I know. I was not in a position to drive out, but I've seen 3 launches while I've been on property. Have yet to go to actually see one from Kennedy. I actually, a colleague, friend of mine, who I will fill in for on his local radio news network that he has, that he bases out of Melbourne. He talked about that launch when Artemis 2 launched and how it shook the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that it shook the house to feel that. That's one of the things I'm going to get down there someday, just as I don't care. See one and launch at least. Yep. Because everyone says it's just, you feel it. And Greg, I'm sure you experience, you feel it in your chest, that vibration.
And Walter Cronkite used to talk about when you go back and look at the Apollo 11 coverage that he did. He talks about the fact that we're getting that rumble that we're used to experiencing. Of course, those Saturn V's, they were that was big time stuff.
Well, if you go back, when you talk about the first time that Saturn V launched, and that's something that distinctly I hear him saying it right here in my head, that literally that little trailer that they had, but it was falling apart. They had to hold the window in because the sound knocked the window out of that CBS trailer the first time they did.
Oh my
they
God.
Covered a Saturn V launch just because of the sheer power. No one had ever experienced. They didn't know what to expect with that.
Right.
Having covered all the way back to Mercury and having those trailers they roll out there at Kennedy. I want to get out there and see it someday.
And I'm sure you'll take us along when you do.
We will. We will. We will. I'll have the real nice cameras at that point, maybe.
Before we go, and before I completely lose my voice, let's talk real briefly about Friday's forecast. Let me get this situated real nice on the screen here so we can talk about it. But we have 2 Fridays in a row here, a little thread of seeing some storms from our friends over at Weatherfront. We've got the map queued up here, and so starting first with the marginal risk for severe storms from the Storm Prediction Center. You can see that on your screen here pretty much for all of North Carolina and the upper half of South Carolina. And if we switch that over to the Weather Prediction Center excessive rainfall, and I switch that over to Friday, it seems like the real threat is going to be that excessive rain, slight risk tier 2 out of 4 for the eastern halves of North Carolina and South Carolina. And I was just looking, guys, at the latest run of the HRRR, and we can kind of just now begin to glimpse what that storm threat will look like. So here's the future radar as we go through Thursday. More scattered storms, kind of like we had on this Wednesday night. And there, right there at about the last frame, the 7-8 o'clock time frame on Friday, you can start to see some of those storms lining up as they begin to push out to the east. So I guess the timing on this is a little bit later in the day on Friday, if I'm looking at this right.
Right.
Yeah. And Greg, and I don't know, everything that I'm seeing is saying it could be 1 to 2 inches for you, and then your neighbor may get nothing. I mean, it's that widely scattered situation. This isn't like a big line, but the training situation, that's what we're more concerned about, right?
Yes, and late last week, I was taking, the HREF, the high resolution ensembles, had a greater than 90% chance of an inch or more of rain over a huge area. And about half the area got that. And then there was this area from Raleigh north and east that just got completely ripped off. Mm-hmm. And, it's one of those frustrating things when you're dealing with convection, is that there's so many things that can either enhance it and there's so many things that can kill it. And you just, as high resolution as these models are, and as much good science as there is in them, I don't think we're even close to be able to forecast the interaction of one cell with an outflow boundaries and new convection. I don't think that's going to be doable in my lifetime. I really don't.
Yeah, and I guess that's where we call it a forecast. We don't call it a nowcast. I'd say we don't call it a nowcast, but we don't call it it's an educated guess. I mean, a lot of times with that, and I think sometimes that's what frustrates the public. I see that all the time. Oh, you got it wrong. It's like, no, we said somebody might get 1 inch or 2 inches and somebody might not get nothing. And that's kind of the situation we're kind of coming up on Friday. It's not going to be a total washout for everybody, but where it rains, it could rain a lot in a short amount of time.
I was doing storm coverage on the Carolina Weather Group last Friday as those storms were coming through, and some of them were really intense. They were really scattered, just like you were talking about. And I feel bad because after 2 hours, I had to walk away. We even still had stuff on the board, but I sounded like this. And I had no voice left. So that's where the Carolina Weather Net came in to carry the rest of the coverage. But I felt bad walking away in the middle of the game.
It's interesting, Jay-Z, you bring that up, because I jumped on an hour later, and right about that time, it was like, we still had residual flash flood warnings in Rockingham County and in Anson County, down around there, that had been issued while you were still on the air, and they had watched it. The rain was long gone. We didn't really get a lot of flooding reports out of those areas in that time that I was on. And then all of a sudden, it was just like that. We went from a whole slew of polygons across North and South Carolina to nothing. They were all gone. It was just, they had rained themselves out essentially. Right. So, and that's, I'm guessing, Greg, because you got the knowledge that James and I wish we had. That's the kind of, I know, but he's got the real cool stuff in there rattling around. I guess that's kind of what we're looking at setting up probably over Friday, definitely, maybe even tomorrow as well.
Right. And I was going to ask both of you if you think there's any semblance of credibility to this opinion here, is that I think that in some ways the television industry oversold our capabilities by making statements like we can predict the weatder right down to your backyard.
I remember when y'all
still comes from the TV industry. So I don't how much.
You could, so James, if you want to go away, that's fine. Greg, I remember when y'all rolled that out, and I being on the opposite side of that was like, what? Seriously? Y'all are doing this?
Right.
I mean, we're rolling out the Doppler 5000, and everybody was adding zeros behind their radars just so they could look cooler. I mean, it's just like when we went from what X to I to all, remember all that stuff, all those fads and the way branding was done. But Greg, I will agree with you. And that, again, being from someone on the other side of things, and I always tell people I don't write them, I just read them. and have been for my entire career. Yeah, sometimes it does, like, y'all are seriously saying things that, nah, come on. And we would make fun. I'll be honest with you. We make fun on the radio side of things when we are doing storm coverage. We're making fun of the TV guys all night long. We're vicious. We were vicious on our radio side of things, especially with the Norfolk TV market. I'm not going to lie. And there were a couple of people on the news side of things who really got out of control. In fact, we are 15 years removed from Past Perpendicular. Go search Past Perpendicular WAVY on YouTube.
I will not.
No, it's one of those situations like it's like, guys, you're not doing yourselves any favor with TV by doing those things.
And do you know that one of the things the consultants, the so-called experts, told me is that never talk about what you're not sure of. And I got more positive feedback from people that said, Greg, I remember the time you looked into the camera and said, I honestly do not know how this is going to play out. Here are the 2 or 3 most plausible options, but I'd be lying to you if I told you I was more confident in one than the other. And people appreciated that. And so it's like, why should you pretend to know more than you know and to have more confidence than you have?
I like the stations, and this is something I still see. They're like, first warn or early alert. We'll bring you the warning first. I'm like, we all get the warning at the same time.
Exactly.
and really, shouldn't we work together when it comes to life-threatening weather?
Yes.
And not worry about competition.
Yes.
All right. So I don't get fired. I'm going to real briefly show this, and then I know Greg's got El Nino, and then we got to get out of here. But there's a lunar eclipse happening Thursday night into Friday morning.
Right.
The peak is something like 12:05 a.m. Friday. So you're going to see Friday as the date of the lunar eclipse, but you have to stay up late for it on Thursday night. The problem is the clouds. The clouds are going to really be hugging us tight. At least if in the latest run of the HRRR. What we are hoping to do, if I have voice, and we have some visibility, is we've had some success in years past by teaming up with all of our friends in the Carolina Weather Group and all pointing our cameras at the moon across the Carolinas and just going to whichever camera happens to be in the clear. So
yeah, I'm more curious what thickness on those clouds is, because we have had several lunar eclipses where we had that, where we were thinking we're going to get clouded out, and we ended up breaking just a little break long enough for even to be a clear view right at peak time, which is always seems like right around midnight, just past midnight when they happen. At least the last couple of eclipses like this, it probably, I don't know. We don't get thicknesses on those cloud models though, do we? We just get coverage. We just don't know how thick they are. So it's a good chance you'll be able to see it through it and still see a pretty good image.
Especially if it's cirrus, if the cirrus is thin enough, you can see right through that.
Right.
So, what is the percentage on this? Like how much coverage?
Give me a second here.
Me a lot of questions I don't know the answers to.
Let me get on time. You know what? My go-to is timeanddate.com. I will.
Okay.
What percentage of the eclipse? We're going to get to like 95%.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah.
I thought you meant what percentage of cloud cover.
No.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like 95%, like almost.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. It'll be pretty much a red. We'll be pretty much seeing it as a red. Yeah. Let's see here. I'll do Raleigh just to kind of centralize it for everybody. But pretty much, this is not going to be a situation like where we had the solar eclipse, where I was able to see just a tiny little piece carved out, on the northern Outer Banks. Let's see if I can get this to pull up here for us. Let me click to the screen share, and then we will get out of here because James, I think, is done.
James was done about 30 seconds in.
30 seconds ago. So here's kind of what the view is going to be like from at peak 12 a.m. It's going to be pretty much red for 3/4 of the skirt. The good part, just the very top. Yeah, that's what we're expecting at peak on at around 12 a.m. That's for Raleigh. Your mileage may vary depending on how far north, south, east, west you are from the state capital of North Carolina.
And now put some clouds on it and just look through it like this. Well, before we go, I know Greg's got a El Nino update for us.
And I'll zip through this real quick. But the interesting thing to me is that the anomalies on the 3 Nino regions in the Central and Eastern Pacific did not change at all in the last week. And so you might look at that and you say, well, gee, what's all the hype about? What's all this talk about the super El Nino? And I did a little bit of research and found out that there are these Kelvin waves that can make these increases look like more of a stair step, that it's not a linear increase in a developing El Nino, that it can go up for a while and then level off and then go up for a while. So the fact that these didn't change in the last week doesn't necessarily mean that there's, that it's not coming. The other thing I'm going to zip through this here real quick. I wanted to show you one more thing. Let's see here. These are the actual, okay, yeah, this is it. So these are subsurface temperature anomalies. And over on the left, on the axis there, you can see 50 meters, 100 meters, 150 meters, so forth. That is over in here, I believe that is plus 11 degrees Celsius at about 100 meters underneath the surface. That is about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, or almost 20 degrees Fahrenheit. This is incredibly warm water subsurface in the Eastern Pacific. And as soon as this stuff percolates up to the surface, those sea surface temperature anomalies are more than likely going to go through the roof. And that's why the European ensembles are indicating that this relative oceanic Nino index, which is new this year, could get up into the 3s. And we've never seen that. Like all the way back to the time they've been keeping these index values back to 1950. And so what are the impacts going to be if we are dealing with an El Nino that is in uncharted territory? We really don't know.
Peak of hurricane season here in the Atlantic. So like you said, we just don't know. We've got one disturbance out there, which looked like it might get a little frisky earlier today. The percentages are starting to go down with that. So, which, that would be Dolly, by the way, folks. If the next storm on the list is so crazy, the next name on the list is Dolly. But yeah, that disturbance out there, the 8 o'clock the 8 o'clock update had dropped it because earlier today it was in the red. Now it's down into the orange at 60% and staying at 60%, which is a medium chance. But, everything we've seen so far trying to make its way across the Atlantic so far here in the last couple of weeks hasn't survived that long.
And there was one a couple of weeks ago, they gave an 80% chance and that thing just died on the wall on the vine. So,
right.
But we are still, I think September 10th is the date that climatologically there's more likely to be a tropical cyclone in the Atlantic Basin than any other day of the year. And we're still a couple of weeks away from that. And of course, Hazel is a great example of how you can't let your guard down even into the middle of October.
And Andrew is a great example of how El Nino year, you can't let your guard down.
Yes, because that was a below normal season. But if you tell anybody in Homestead, Florida that, they'll kill you.
Right, exactly. Hey, National Hurricane Center and the Miami National Weather Service office, same thing.
Yep, exactly. Well, anyway, so that's all I've got. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but I thought that was a very interesting anomaly.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you short.
No problem at all. No problem at all. This has been fun.
People can find it on your Patreon, can't they? On Mondays, right, or something?
Actually, this is on my YouTube channel, which is free.
Better.
If you just go to the official, I think it's the official weather channel, and I do El Nino updates Monday and drought updates on Thursday, and there's no cost to that at all. Whereas on the Patreon, it's like $3 a month. So, but yeah, these are fun things to do. It's given me a chance to do different types of content on all these different platforms. And so instead of having 18,000 different types of content on one platform, you just sort of split it up and it makes it more fun.
Mm-hmm. That's what's great about this and what we're able to do now.
Exactly.
And well, this has been fun. We can do it from. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and roll the credits and then I'm going to go to sleep and not talk for like 8 hours. It's going to be great.
Yeah, do that.
I hope you feel better, buddy.
Me too. I'm tired of sounding like this. Thanks for everybody putting up with it. Hopefully it won't be this way. We hope to see you for the lunar eclipse. We might see you for storms. There's all sorts of fun stuff happening. So,
and remember that the safest way to look at an eclipse is to take a paper clip, unbend it, cut off one part of it, and tape it to the middle. And then you have a clip in the shape of a letter E, which by definition makes it an E clip. Look at it anytime you want. It's perfectly safe.
Yep. There you go. I have no better advice than that. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.